Hello, welcome to UGCE Pathshala. I am Dr. Udita Mitro. I am an assistant professor in Sri Shikshayatan College, Kolkata in the Department of Sociology. Today I will be introducing you to the concepts of processing and analyzing quantitative data. This is a part of a bigger project of research methodology, and I will mainly talk about the part on social statistics. Processing and analyzing quantitative data are concepts which are sometimes intermixed, and certain writers do not consider these two processes to be separate. They take it to be as one. But for our analytical purposes, we will be talking about these two parts in detail. First, dealing with how to process data, and the second part dealing with how to analyze data. This is a very important part of research methodology, especially in sociology, because sociology is a subject which deals with a lot of raw data. When the data have been collected after in your research, after a lot of hard work, these data are just numbers before us. They do not say anything, they do not carry any meaning. Unless and until we process and analyze the data, we will not be able to make any conclusion about the research that we have done. So, without knowing how to process and analyze data, our knowledge in sociology remains incomplete. The part of processing and analyzing data would require a certain knowledge about social statistics, and I know students are afraid of mathematics. They are afraid the moment they hear that they have to do sums. But believe me, this is a part which is very interesting and it needs a lot of practice. To talk about processing and analyzing data, we first can say that processing involves a part which has different subparts like editing, like classification, like tabulation, and the part on analyzing data has statistics or maths or sums of different kinds. But as you do, you will realize that this is a very, very interesting part in social research, and this has to be done with a lot of precision, with a lot of concentration. Only then will you be able to get exact and accurate results in social research. Data processing or reduction of data involves various steps needed for preparing the data for analysis. These steps involve editing, coding, classification and tabulation of the data, and graphical representation before it is presented for analysis. First we come to what is editing. Editing of data involves checking for errors in the questionnaire and interview schedules. The questionnaires and schedules should be checked for first completeness, second accuracy, and third uniformity. Coding, the next part in processing of data, implies the process of assigning numbers or other symbols to the answers so that they can be categorized into specific classes. These classes must be exhaustive and mutually exclusive. The next part of classification has been defined as the process of arranging data into groups and classes on the basis of some common characteristics like gender. Tabulation is the process of summarizing raw data for the purpose of compactness for analysis. Tabulation is done for the process of comparison, and here we make tables in order to compare between two categories of data. After the data has been processed and we know that we have organized our data, the next step that we bring into in our research is data analysis, and this is one of the most important parts of social research. Data analysis means computation of certain measures for the purpose of searching for patterns of relationship among different groups or variables. Analysis can be of various types, namely descriptive, where we describe one variable. Inferential, this part deals with the task of interpreting data. Correlation, here we try to find out the degree of association between two or more variables. Causal analysis, where we try to find out the causal relationship or cause-effect relationship between two or more variables. And multivariate analysis, where there is the use of multiple statistical methods to analyze more than two variables in research. It has been possible due to the introduction of computers in statistics. Data analysis has a large part of social statistics involved in it. So mainly today our discussion will describe the different types of social statistics that we deal with while doing our research. But first let us understand what is statistics in social research. Statistics is a tool used by the researchers to analyze quantitative data in social research. Quantitative data implies nothing but data which can be reduced to numbers. Therefore, it is known as social statistics. Social statistics has two parts. Descriptive statistics, this is mainly concerned with organizing the data for analysis, and second, inferential statistics, concerned with drawing inferences on the population on the basis of the data collected from the sample. Here, some of the most useful measures of statistical computation to be discussed here are measures of central tendency, measures of dispersion, chi-square test, t-test, measures of relationship. First, we take up measures of central tendency. The measure of central tendency defines a value around which most of the scores tend to cluster. The importance of the measure of central tendency is twofold. First, it is an average which represents all the scores in the distribution and gives a precise picture of the entire distribution. Second, it allows us to compare two or more groups in terms of typical performance. There are three measures of central tendency, namely the arithmetic mean, the median and the mode. Mean is known as the arithmetic average and is the most stable measure of central tendency. It is defined as the summation of all the values given in the series of numbers divided by the number of values. Mean can be calculated through different methods. First, we calculate the mean from ungrouped scores. This can be computed by the following equation: mean is equal to summation f1 plus f2 plus f3, and we continue till fn divided by n, where f stands for the frequency and n is the number of scores. This is how we calculated the mean from ungrouped scores. Now we calculate the mean from the grouped scores. In case of computing the mean from the grouped frequency distribution, the mean is calculated by a slightly different method from that given above. In that case, the mean can be computed by the formula summation fx by n, where x is the midpoint of the class intervals and f is the frequency assigned to each class interval and n is the total frequency. Next, we come to median. Median is the middlemost value in the entire distribution of data. It divides the distribution into two equal parts. One half of the distribution falls below the median value and the other half falls above it. Before calculating the median, we have to arrange the values in either an ascending or descending order. It is a positional average and it has been shown by the formula median is equal to value of n plus 1 by 2th item. It should be mentioned in this context that the median is usually used to describe qualitative phenomena like intelligence. It is not often used in sampling statistics. Computation of the median where the data are ungrouped. Here, two situations arise in the computation of the media from ungrouped data. First, n is odd, that is the total number of scores is odd, and second, when n is even. To consider the first case where n is odd, suppose we have the following numbers 7, 10, 8, 12, 9, 11, 7. First, we have to arrange these data in an ascending order like 7, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Then we apply the above equation to compute the median. And here the median is 7 plus 1 by 2 or 8 by 2 is equal to the fourth item, that is 9 is the median. When the total number of scores is even like 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, the median is the average of the two middlemost numbers. In the above numbers, the two middlemost numbers are 9 and 10. The average of these numbers is 19 divided by 2 or 9.5. Computation of the median when the data are grouped. When the scores are arranged into a frequency distribution, the median by definition is the 50% point in the distribution. We calculate the cumulative frequency of the distribution and divide n by 2 to locate the class interval in which the median falls. The following equation would help us to compute the median from a grouped frequency distribution. Equation is L plus n by 2 minus f divided by fm into I, where L is the exact lower limit of the class interval upon which the median lies. N by 2 means 1/2 of the total number of scores. F is the sum of the scores on all intervals below L, and fm is the frequency within the interval upon which the median falls, and I is the width of the interval. Next, we come to mode. When a rough and quick estimate of central tendency is wanted, mode is usually the most preferred measure. Mode is that value which has the greatest frequency in the given series of scores. Like median, mode is also a positional average and is therefore unaffected by extreme scores in the series of numbers. It is useful in all situations where we want to eliminate the effect of extreme variations. Calculating the mode from ungrouped data. In a simple ungrouped data, the mode is that single measure or score which occurs most frequently. For instance, in the series of the numbers 10, 11, 11, 12, 12, 13, 13, 13, 14, 14, the crude mode is 13, that is the most frequent one. Calculating the mode from grouped data. When the data are grouped into a frequency distribution, the crude mode is found out by the midpoint of the interval which contains the highest frequency. We can also calculate the true mode from a grouped frequency distribution. The formula for calculating the true mode in a normal or symmetrical distribution is 3 median minus 2 mean. Next, we come to the measures of dispersion. Measures of central tendency like mean, median and mode can only be a representative of the entire series of scores, but it cannot fully describe the nature of a frequency distribution. For instance, it cannot state how far a given score in a series deviates from the average. In other words, how much a score is lower or higher than the average. Therefore, in order to measure the spread of score from the central tendency, we calculate the measures of dispersion or variability. There are different measures of dispersion as there are measures of central tendency. They are the range, mean deviation and standard deviation, to name a few. First, we come to range. Range is the simplest and the easiest measure of variability. It is usually calculated by subtracting the lowest score from the highest score in the given series of data. The value of the range depends on only two values, and this is its main limitation. It ignores the remaining values in the distribution, and therefore it fails to provide an accurate and stable picture of the dispersed scores. How to find range for ungrouped data? In a distribution of ungrouped scores, if the scores are arranged in an array, the range is defined as the largest score minus the smallest score plus 1. In a distribution that has 103 as the highest score and 30 as the lowest score, the range is computed as 103 minus 30 plus 1, that is 74. Range for grouped data. In case of data which are grouped, the range is the difference between the upper true limit of the highest class interval and the lower true limit of the lowest class interval. Now come to mean or average deviation. It is the average of difference of the values of items from some average of the series. It is based on absolute deviations of scores from the center. This procedure is designed to avoid the algebraic sum of deviations from the mean equaling 0, in which case it would be impossible to compute indices of variability. How to find average deviation for ungrouped scores? Mean deviation from mean can be found by the formula summation x minus x bar taken in their absolute values divided by n, where x denotes a particular score and x bar means the mean of the score, n stands for the total number of frequencies. Average deviation can also be found for grouped data, and the formula for calculating it is summation f into x minus x bar taken in their absolute value divided by n. Now come to the most stable measure of dispersion, that is standard deviation. Standard deviation is the most stable measure of dispersion or variability. It is defined as square root of the average of the squares of deviations when such deviations for the values of individual items in a series are obtained from the arithmetic average. In finding the standard deviation, we avoid the difficulty of signs by squaring the separate deviations. Standard deviation for ungrouped scores, the formula is root over summation x square by n, where x is the value of the deviation of the scores from the mean and n is the total number of frequencies given. Standard deviation for grouped data, the formula for standard deviation of the grouped data is root over summation fx square by n, where f stands for the individual frequency, x is the value of the deviation of the individual scores from the mean and n stands for the total frequency. This was all about standard deviation and in short about the type of statistics that summarizes the data in a single number. But now let us come to chi-square, where we are concerned with two variables. It can also be concerned with one variable as well. The chi-square test is an important one among several tests of significance developed by statisticians. It is symbolically written as x square and can be used to determine if categorical data shows dependency or the two classifications are independent. It can be used to make comparisons between theoretical populations and actual data when categories are used. The test is in fact a technique through the use of which it is possible for all researchers to test first the goodness of fit and second the test of significance of association between two attributes. What is the test of goodness of fit? As a test of goodness of fit, chi-square enables us to see how well the theoretical distribution fit into the observed data. If the calculated value of x square is greater than its table value at a certain level of significance, the fit is considered to be a good one. When the calculated value of x square is less than the table value, we do not consider the fit to be a good one. What is the chi-square test of independence? As a test of independence, chi-square test enables us to explain whether or not two attributes are associated. If the table value of chi is greater than its computed value, we conclude that there is no association between the attributes or the null hypothesis is upheld. But if the computed value of chi is greater than its table value, we uphold that the two attributes are associated and the association is not due to chance factors, but it exists in reality. Next, we come to t-test. The central limit theorem states that if sample size n is large, the sample statistic approaches the z distribution or the normal distribution. When a sample is taken from a normally distributed population with a known mean and standard deviation, and then compute a z score on the basis of each observation, the resulting scores will have a z distribution, that is a normal distribution with mean is equal to 0 and standard deviation is equal to 1. But the problem is that in most of the cases the population standard deviation is unknown. As the central limit theorem involves the use of the standard deviation, it cannot be ignored. One solution here is to substitute the sample standard deviation for the population standard deviation. To test the samples of small size, we have the t-statistic. T-test can be of two types, namely two-sample t-test and related sample t-test. The type of test chosen will depend upon whether or not the two samples are independent or related. The two-sample t-test. When two samples are to be tested on any trait or variable, then we apply for a two-sample t-test. The formula for computation of the value of t is as follows. T is equal to x1 bar minus x bar 2 divided by root over n1 s1 square plus n1 s2 square divided by n1 n2 minus 2 into n1 plus n2 divided by n1 n2, where x bar 1 is the mean of the first sample, x bar 2 is the mean of the second sample, S1 and S2 are the standard deviations of the first and the second samples respectively, and N1 and N2 are the sample sizes of the two samples respectively. T-test of related samples. This is applicable when there are repeated measurements of the same sample, that is time series design. The formula for computing the value of t for related samples is t is equal to x bar 1 minus x bar 2 divided by SD, where again x bar 1 and x bar 2 are the two values of the mean of the samples respectively, and SD is the estimation of the standard error of the mean difference scores. The standard error is calculated by the formula root over SD square by n, where SD square is the pooled variance of the different scores and n is the total number of scores. The pooled variance is computed by the formula SD square is equal to n summation d square minus summation d whole square divided by n into n minus 1, where d is the difference between the two mean of the related sample. Next we come to measures of relationship. The statistical measures discussed before have dealt with univariate population, that is the population which have one variable as their characteristic feature. But in case of observations which have two variables are known as bivariate relationships. If for every measurement of a variable x we have corresponding value of a second variable y, the resulting pairs of values are called a bivariate population. We have to answer two types of questions in bivariate population. First, does there exist an association or correlation between the two variables? If yes, to what degree? And second, is there any cause and effect relation between the two variables? First, we take up the coefficient of correlation. It is the most widely used method of measuring the degree of relationship between two variables. At times, we want to know if there is a relation between the variables incidence of child labor and broken homes, or that between drug addiction and involvement into criminal activities. In all such cases, it would be appropriate to use coefficient correlation. The Pearson correlation coefficient, or Pearson's R, is a measure of the straight line relationship between two interval level variables. To employ Pearson's correlation coefficient correctly as a measure of association between x and y variables, the following requirements must be taken into account. Both x and y variables must be measured at the interval level, and testing the significance of Pearson's R requires both x and y variables to be normally distributed in the population. Second, we come to simple regression analysis. Regression analysis is very closely related to correlation. It is the statistical determination of a relationship between two or more variables. When we use regression analysis, we are essentially interested in the description of a predictive relationship. The independent variable in the relationship is known as the cause, and the dependent variable is the effect. In regression analysis, we can state accurately the degree of change in the two variables. In other words, how much each unit change in x produces a change in y. The basic equation of simple linear regression is as follows. Y-intercept is equal to a plus bx, where y-intercept is the predicted scores of the dependent variable, x is the scores of the independent variable, a is the y-intercept, the point at which the regression line crosses the y-axis, representing the predicted value of y when x is equal to 0, and b is the regression coefficient. It is the slope of the regression line and indicates the expected change in y with a change of 1 unit in x. Next, we come to contingency tables. Contingency tables are another way of explaining and interpreting relationship between variables. In the present discussion, we would be concerned only with the bivariate contingency tables, where the focus of discussion would be on two variables. One, an independent variable or the predictor variable symbolized by x, and the other, a dependent variable symbolized by y. Contingency tables can be interpreted by percentaging it in three ways as follows. First is percentaging down. This is one of the most common ways of calculating percentages. Here the column marginals are taken as the base on which the percentages are calculated. Percentaging down allows us to determine the effect of the independent variable by comparing across the percentages within a row, that is by comparing people in different categories of the independent variable. Percentaging across. When we are percentaging across, we are taking row marginals as the base and calculating percentages. Here we are percentaging across and comparing up and down. Last is percentaging on the total number of cases. This is another method of interpreting bivariate contingency tables. Here the percentages are calculated on the total number of cases, or n. Now we have come to the end of our discussion of processing and analyzing data, and we have seen how sums can really make our life easier and help us in analyzing our data and reach to a conclusion. But it also means that statistics has certain limitations. There are certain group of thinkers or certain writers who say that statistics is taking the place of sociology, especially social statistics is taking the place of sociology, and there is no need for separate sociology in academia. There are other group of thinkers who say that statistics or social statistics should not take the place of sociology, and sociology has a much bigger place. It is true that sociology is incomplete without social statistics, but at the same time social statistics also has certain limitations. It mainly deals with quantitative data or data which are reduced to mere numbers. In case of handling qualitative data, where the data cannot be easily reduced into numbers, like attitude, like intelligence, like gender, etc., these kinds of data cannot be easily reduced to numbers, and hence statistics is of little help to them. To reach a conclusion, today sociologists or thinkers are talking of mixed methods of social research, where we are focusing both on quantitative data as well as qualitative data. And researchers believe that only a compilation of these two kinds of data can help us in getting a complete picture about social reality. Triangulation of data is one of the methods by which, or one of the ways by which, this mixed method in research can be applied. I would like to conclude here by stating that statistics has limitations, and we must admit that it has limitations. It is not sociology, and sociology is not statistics. Both have their separate entities, yet they are at the same time one. One cannot do without the other. After we have collected our data in the process of social research, then can we think of processing data. Processing, again I repeat, involves coding, classification, tabulation, editing, etc. After we have organized our data, we come to analyze these data through measures of central tendency, through measures of dispersion, chi-square, t-test, contingency tables, correlation coefficient, etc. But we must admit, and this is the final ending line, that we must admit that statistics is not a substitute for research. A researcher must be reminded time and again that his or her efforts are the chief motivating factor behind a good research. Statistics is just a tool which helps in analyzing and processing data.